On today's video, I'm going to be replacing the short block on a BR 600 backpack blower. The reason why we're replacing the short block is because the engine froze up and it's cheaper to replace the entire short block than to go in and fix all the parts individually. First thing I'm going to do once I got the shroud removed is going to be to disconnect the carburetor. There's a couple of fuel lines on here as well as the throttle cable. And at the bottom of the carburetor is going to be the impulse line. Just go ahead and twist and turn until it comes off. Next, I'm going to disconnect the manifold. There is just a flathead screw there that holds on a clamp. Go ahead and take that screw back and loosen the clamp. Now I'm going to use my rounded head pry tool to pop the manifold off. And disconnect the impulse line from the engine using the pry tool as well. You're going to need a 13mm socket to take off the flywheel nut. Once you remove the nut, go ahead and take a punch and hammer on the center of the crankshaft, which is going to pop free the flywheel. To remove the back plate of the blower, you're going to have to take off the padding to expose the screws that hold the assembly together. There's 4 screws that hold on the AV system, and you can find that underneath the padding. Now remove the screw that holds on each shoulder strap, and you will have everything exposed so you can disassemble the backing plate on the blower. I just go ahead and tuck these pieces into the top so that way they stay out of the way. It just makes it easier when you're trying to work and unscrew everything. Now go ahead and remove the 4 AV screws. Once the screws are removed, go ahead and give the backing plate a tug, give it a little shake until the AV pieces pop out. The blower assembly is held on by a bunch of perimeter screws. Go ahead and remove all these screws, and then we'll have to pry it apart because it does stick a little bit when you get the screws out. Start prying on one end, work your way around, so that way you don't end up busting something if you're trying to pull it all apart at once. There's not really any plastic pieces, so to say, that are snapped in. It's just a matter of these 2 pieces fitting so tightly together that they're intertwined, so that's why we have to pry them apart. Next, I'm going to remove the fan wheel. I've already blocked off the top of the piston on the engine on the other side, so that way it can come off. Once you get to this point, there's 4 screws that hold on the engine block. Go ahead and use an impact to get these off. Unfortunately, one of these bolts will not come out of the short block, so I am going to replace this fan half. It's going to be cheaper than trying to get that out because you can't heat it up because of the plastic surrounding it. It's set flush. You can't grab onto it anyway. You can't drill it out because it's going to heat up, and then you couldn't extract it anyway. So we're just going to replace this plastic, make it simple, and move on with the project. Here's the part number for the blower half if you guys do need to order it. Now I'm going to mount the short block on the new blower half using the 4 bolts. And here's the part number for the hardware. Put these in hand tight to get them started so that way everything is threaded correctly. Now go ahead and put the bolts in the rest of the way, and once I'm done, I'm going to go back and check the torque on them before I seal everything up. Now I'm going to reinstall the fan. Make sure that you have some rope or piston stop inside the cylinder wall so that way it binds up so you can tighten it down. On this particular engine, I like to use rope because it's got a smaller plug port, the CMR6H NGK plug, instead of the BPR M7A plug. Once you got the piston bound up, go ahead and torque the fan wheel back on. Now I'm going to reinstall the other half of the blower assembly. Once you got everything aligned and locked back in place, go ahead and reinstall the perimeter screws on this blower assembly. Now go ahead and install the backing plate and secure the AV springs. The last step on this side is to install the padding. Start with installing the impulse line. Now install the flywheel. Make sure you line the key up on the crankshaft. You'll feel the key snap into place when it's aligned on the crankshaft. Now tighten the flywheel bolt back on and you're good to go. Next, reinstall the manifold. Now install the ignition coil and make sure you check your flywheel gap before everything's tightened down. Now I'm going to install the carburetor and the throttle back on the air housing assembly. Make sure your throttle cable and your fuel lines are in these nice little grooves, otherwise your fuel lines will get pinched and they won't provide the proper amount of fuel. There's 2 screws that hold this white plastic piece in place, one at the top and then one at the bottom that holds the air filter assembly in as well. Sometimes these pieces don't align very well, so you just have to work it into place until you're able to get your screw threaded in. Now for the muffler, make sure you don't forget your gasket. I put it on there with the screws ahead of time and then I lightly tighten it down so that way the screws are sticking out just a hair past the gasket, so that way it holds onto place while I'm putting it on the engine block. When you're tightening the screws, do a little bit on each one and go back and forth so that way it doesn't pull in all at once. Now install the shroud. There's 2 screws on the bottom by the fuel tank and 2 screws at the top. And then the recoil, there's going to be 3 screws. Just FYI, the lightly threaded screws are going to be for metal contact and the coarse screws are going to be going into plastic. So that means the screws that go into the recoil are going to be the finely threaded and the other 4 screws are going to be the coarse threaded.
I hope that video was helpful in replacing the short block on a BR600 backpack blower. It is a lot easier just to replace these short blocks and more cost effective than trying to tear them apart and replace the piston and cylinder. So if you guys did find that video helpful, make sure you guys like down below and subscribe to my channel. I've got lots of other great content of repairs that come through the shop on a daily basis, tools that I use for doing the repairs, different tricks that I've learned along the ways. So I appreciate you watching the video and make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.